Hey everybody, Snowflarky here, and today I am sharing my Lightning Rod Lord themed Thunder Stun deck. This is a fun little deck that utilizes some of the powerful Thunder Stun cards that exist, like Thunder King Ryo, Lightning Rod Lord, Zap Mustang, and uses the fact that there are all level 4 Thunders to play Ties of the Brethren and build a board of monsters that really limit what my opponent can do on any particular turn. Um, so this is kind of a silly deck, definitely a deck for your casual environment. But if you get off the right combo, there are lots of decks that you can just completely stop by using Ties of the Brethren and summoning just a bunch of these Thunder Stun monsters. Starting off with our monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Thunder King Ryo. This is a 4-star Thunder monster with 1900 attack that says neither player can add cards from their deck to their hand except by drawing them. So that halts search effects on both sides. And then, of course, during either player's turn, when your opponent would special summon a monster, you can send this face-up card to the graveyard to negate the special summon and destroy it. It is important to note that that effect is for inherent summons, so like spells that are summoning a monster. You can't necessarily negate with Thunder King Ryo, but a 1900 attack normal summon monster that stops your opponent from searching, can negate a special summon. All pretty good effects. Thunder King Ryo is a very popular stun card of old, and we're playing this card at 3 of because this is one of the ones we want to see for our actual normal summon so that we can use Ties of the Brethren with it. So we are playing triple Thunder King. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Thunderclap Monk. So this card is another 1900 attack 4-star Light Thunder monster. When your opponent activates a monster effect while you control this special summoned card, so you do have to special summon Thunderclap Monk to get its effect, um, you can tribute this card to negate the activation of an effect, and if you do, destroy it. Um, so if you have this card special summon, you can negate a monster effect by tributing it. And then, of course, if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 Thunder monster from your hand. Um, so that is in defense position. So that's a good effect as well. This is probably the weakest of the Thunder monsters in our deck. Um, the 1900 attack is fine. It's mostly a body because we need more targets to be able to normal summon and activate Ties of the Brethren. And of course, if this is one of the cards you have to special summon off of Ties, if you target King Ryo, then it still has some usefulness. But 1900 attack, uh, Thunder Monster can negate monster effects. Pretty solid. Next, we have our one of Lightning Rod Lord. Sometimes I play this card at 2, but I think it's better at 1. This is a Thunder 4-star monster with 1800 attack that says neither player can activate spell cards during main phase 1. So that's a pretty annoying effect to deal with. This is actually the reason I built this deck, just because I really like this card's artwork and I like the effect, so I wanted to find a home for this deck. I wanted to find a deck for this card. And so Lightning Rod Lord, now what's important about Lightning Rod Lord is if you normal summon this, you cannot use this as your Ties of the Brethren target because you can't activate spells now during main phase 1, and Ties of the Brethren has to be activated during main phase 1. So this is for pulling off your Ties of the Brethren and to set up that lock on your opponent. And last, we are playing 1 copy of Zap Mustang. Zap Mustang is a card that must be special summoned by a card effect during your main phase 1 and cannot be special summoned by other ways. Also, if you did any other special summoning this turn before Zap Mustang, you can't summon it. So that kind of makes it hard to get out, but what's the payoff? Well, first off, twice per turn, this card cannot be destroyed by battle. Okay, pretty cool. And but the big effect here is that while this card's on the field, each player can only special summon each turn a number of times up to the number of attacks they conduct and reach damage step. So essentially your opponent has to commit to battling with a certain amount of monsters before they can special summon anything. So this is just a special summon lock that you summon off of Ties of the Brethren. And a lot of this deck is built around protecting this card and making sure that your opponent um, cannot ever special summon once it hits the field. Um, this card is almost tempting to run it 2 of, just because if you draw it, then it's dead. So I would like a second one to make sure there's always one alive. But, you know, this deck's already, I risk it for the biscuit with this. Next up, we are moving to our spell cards. We are playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. This is like many of my decks you'll see as a theme in this channel. I don't use the extra deck a lot with this, mostly because our Thunder monsters are the ones that we want on the field, stunning. And of course, you know, Zap Mustang makes it so we can't special summon anyway. So, Pot of Extravagance allows us to turn our extra deck into card advantage. You activate it at the start of main phase 1. You draw 2 cards. If you banish 6 cards from your extra deck randomly face down, which is something we have no problem doing. So, you know, it doesn't interfere with Thunder King because Thunder King lets you draw, it just doesn't let you search. And of course, the big problem is if you have Lightning Rod Lord on the field, you can't activate this card. But usually, once you have a Lightning Rod Lord set up, you're already in your win or lose position, depending on whether your opponent answers it. So, definitely nice to dig further in the deck for pieces that we need. Next, we have a singular copy of Card of Demise. This deck plays kind of similarly to a Demise deck. Now, of course, you can't use this on the turn you use Extravagance or Ties of the Brethren, so mostly this is a card you want to see on a follow-up turn to reload your hand with trap cards that you can set. And because you can play this card in main phase 2, so that Lightning Rod Lord won't be getting in the way of it. And so essentially, you draw cards until you have 3 in your hand, and then at the end of your turn, they all go to the graveyard, which is why we play lots of trap cards so that we can set them. And of course, you can't special summon the turn you activate this card, so you know you can't use it with Ties of the Brethren. So you know, just a kind of reload card after making our initial play. And then, of course, we are playing 3 copies of Ties of the Brethren. This is a card that you pay 2,000 life points, then target a level 4 or lower monster you control, and for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters. Also, you are going to special summon 2 monsters from your deck with the same type, attribute, and level, which is important. That's why all these monsters are 4-star Thunder Light monsters. So you're going to special summon 2 with different names from each other and the monster you selected. So essentially, you'll only ever be activating this on either Thunder King or Thunderclap Monk, because you actually can't do it with Lightning Rod Lord, and this card has to. This is the only way you'll get this card out on the field. So you're going to play it with one of these 2, and ideally, if both are in your deck, off of this, you want to summon Thunder King and Zap Mustang, because now you have a setup where your opponent cannot search. If they special summon a monster, you contribute this and destroy it. They can't play spell cards during main phase 1, and they can't special summon. That is a lot of stun to be dealing with. So that makes it quite a nuisance to deal with, and you know, sometimes that play right there just outright wins you the game. against certain decks, certain matchups. So triple Ties of the Brethren, just because we definitely want to make sure we see it. When you play Ties of the Brethren, remember, always prioritize summoning Zap Mustang if it's in your deck. And next, I would say Lightning Rod Lord. Now, if one of these is in your hand, of course, you have one other monster, Thunderclap Monk, or if it's Thunderclap Monk you're playing Ties of the Brethren on, Thunder King Ryo to summon. And if you draw both those one-of bricks, well, that's just super unlucky. And for our last spell, we are playing a Called by the Grave. We really need Ties of the Brethren to go off. We really don't want to get ashed on Extravagance. So Called by the Grave is a nice way to just help protect ourselves when we do that play. You know, if they're going to Ash Blossom, deal with it. Mostly what it's here for. You know, overall good card. Deal with hand traps and a little flexibility in other uses. Next, let's move into our trap cards. We are playing 3 copies of Phantom Knight's Sword. So this is a trap card where you target a monster you control. It gains 800 attack, which is pretty nice. It makes the bodies even bigger for, you know, getting in extra damage. But also, if that monster would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can destroy this card instead. So it also offers protection. For your monsters, which is very important when you have these big, powerful stun monsters. We want ways to protect them um, so that they could keep on with their powerful stun effects. You know, we want to have answers to the limited amount of answers an opponent will have. So Phantom Knight's Sword is definitely one of them. It has an additional effect that deals with Phantom Knights, but that won't be important because we're not playing any of that. Next, we are playing 2 copies of Phantom Knight's Wings. Target a face-up monster on the field. It gains 500 attack. Also, the first time that target would be destroyed by battle or card effect, this turn, it is not destroyed. So the 500 attack gain is permanent even after this card plays. You just chain it when a card would be destroyed, and you protect it. Um, just additional protection. Worth considering playing 3. I might do so. Probably would. And as a general reminder, this trap card lineup should be adjusted to deal with um, whatever would be good answers to what you're up against in your local scene, your dueling group. Um, so that is Phantom Knight's Wings. Next, we are playing 3 copies of Storming Mirror Force. What's very important is that the battle has to reach damage step, so your opponent's going to try to summon a monster and attack. If you play Storming Mirror Force, you just send it back to the hand. No damage step. Keep them stalled for another turn. Keep their field open so that you can poke in for some damage. Um, you know, fun little blowout card, and you know, in this kind of deck, they are forced to battle more than you would think, or I should say, forced to battle before they can remove things, since they can't special summon. They don't have all their toolbox removal on hand. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Heavy Storm Duster. We don't like back row. You know, it's a demise deck, so we play this trap card form of spell and trap card removal. You can destroy up to 2 spell and trap cards with this, so you can gain card advantage off that. And if you play it during your opponent's turn, you don't have to worry about the fact that you cannot conduct your battle phase this turn. So, solid card. Always a fun option in demise decks. You know, I have to deal with lots of back row in my scene, so Heavy Storm Duster is a must. If you don't face opponents who play back row, you know, you can always swap the card for another thing. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Gozen Match. This is a floodgate trap that says each player can only control 1 attribute of monster. Send all other face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. So everything in here is a light monster, so we don't have to worry about getting punished by Gozen Match. And it's important to have some options to stop your opponent from playing if you don't get the Ties of the Brethren. This can be one of them. You can always swap this floodgate out for a different one, you know, something like Summon Limit if Gozen Match isn't particularly good in your in your scene. But, I get solid use out of Goes and Match, so for me it's worth main decking the two. And additionally, this is a substitute you could play to Goes and Match, but I'm also just playing one Rivalry of the Warlords. This was a card that says each player can only control one type of monster. So everything in here is Thunder, so again, we're not punished for it. And this can stop some decks that Goes and Match can't. So remember, you could always swap the ratios around of Rivalry of the Warlords or Goes and Match. Um, and of course, I usually play more in the side just to adapt to whatever it is I'm up against. But both these cards can be big blowout cards, good ways to stun if you don't have the Ties of the Brethren set up, maybe buy you some time to get that set up. So Rivalry of the Warlords, make it so everybody can only control one type. Next, we are playing 2 copies of Lost Wind. Now, this card, you target a face-up special summon monster on the field, negate the effects of that monster, and also its original attack is halved. If a monster is special summoned from your opponent's extra deck while this card is in the graveyard, you can set this card but banish it when it leaves the field. So you don't always have Zap Mustang. So sometimes there might be a couple special summons out. Lost Wind is just in there to help hinder those monsters, negating their effect, cutting their attack so that your 1900 bodies can most likely still hit over them. Definitely a little skeptical. I could cut this down to 1 or some, adjust the trap cards as needed, but I like having the option to have a backup plan to hurt special summon monsters if Zap Mustang is not on the field. 1 copy of Macrocosmos. You never really grab stuff from your graveyard, and sometimes playing Macrocosmos just wins in certain matchups because everything that would be sent to the graveyard is banished instead. No big deal for us. And of course, it just auto wins some matchups, so I like Macrocosmos. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Solemn Judgment. I would probably play 3 copies of this if I could find a third one, but I believe I only have 2 in my collection right now. So Solemn Judgment, of course, you can just negate a summon, a spell, or a trap card by paying half your life points. Having a negate to stop an answer to your stun setup is very important in stun decks in general. So Solemn Judgment is an MVP card to keep yourself safe. You can risk getting your life points low between it and Ties of the Brethren, but that's usually not that big a deal. Solemn Strike, just 1 copy of, kind of as a substitute for Judgment. Pay 1500 life points to negate a special summon or a monster effect. You'll mostly use it for that one. If they normal summon a monster that has a monster effect, maybe it's trying to destroy one of your stun cards, well, you hit them with the Solemn Strike, 1500 life points, protect your card. Solid trap card. And then next, this is kind of more specific for my metagame, so you can always shift this out for other 1-for-1 card removal, but I am playing 3 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole. When your opponent summons a monster with 1500 or more attack, you destroy that monster and you banish it instead of sending it to the graveyard. So just in my scene in particular, I find that most of my opponent's monsters that they try to normal summon and answer do have 1500 attack or more, and this can just answer that one monster, then they can attack, and Zap Mustang lock continues. So it works out pretty well for me. This card can definitely be switched out for other 1-for-1 forms of removal. You can run other versions of Mirror Force, or you can run Ring of Destruction if you want to try to burn and poke. That's kind of risky. Just any way to stop your opponent from succeeding in battle. You could play Dimensional Guardian if you want more protection for your cards. So just some options there if you don't like this Bottomless Trap Hole. It works pretty well for me, but every metagame is different. And of course, last I am playing 2 copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device. This card, you just target a monster on the field, return it to the hand. So if your opponent summons a monster, try to battle over your Zap Mustang, get some special summons off. you just play compulsory evac, send it back to the hand, leaves the board open for you to attack. Um, just a way to deal with the one monster per turn your opponent will summon if you have the setup. So that is it for the main deck, and I'm not going to go into specifics of the extra deck for this deck. You don't ever really go into it much. It's mostly just extravagance fodder. I will say, as a general rule of thumb, the options I would use are, general rank 4 good stuff type monsters. Things like Tornado Dragon and Baguska. Just whatever good rank 4s will help you deal with your opponents, because everything is level 4, so you can make rank 4s. Otherwise, since this is another trap card heavy deck from me, I sometimes decide to side Waking the Dragon, and then of course my extra deck just becomes Waking the Dragon targets. Things like Last Warrior from Another Planet, Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon, uh, Geomathmex Sigma, Blue Eyes Alternative, and Naturia Exterio at maxed out copies. All cards that are great, Waking the Dragon targets that can blow out opponents in certain matchups. I've talked about them a number of times in other videos because I play lots of these Waking the Dragon decks just because the card does so good against my. The card does really good in my dueling group. So those are essentially the options, gives you some flexibility as far as what to do, but that is my Thunder Stun deck profile. It's certainly, it's fun to get the setup. It's definitely not fun for your opponent, so I don't play it all the time, but it's it's a weaker kind of stun capability that exists that I was very happy to be able to pull together and cheese out some wins with it. And you can definitely do the same, just because that combo of locking out spells, locking out summons, locking out searches, I mean, that there just hard stops lots of decks on game ones who aren't prepared for it. So if you like that kind of thing, trolling people on your GoPro, you can give this a try. Um, but I'm very happy I got to make it so I can use Lightning Rod Lord, one of my favorite cards. Yeah, I was a big fan of this when it came out, so very happy I got to put this together. Anyway, thanks for viewing, and I will catch you all next time. Take care.